My name is Barbara Barrow. I am Associate Professor of English Studies at the Joint Faculties of Humanities and Theology. This is a very big interdisciplinary faculty with a lot of different humanities departments, of course, and theology also makes it special in that way. I would say it's very cross-disciplinary. So I am part of a group called the Environmental Humanities Hub here that's made up of faculty from different disciplines across HT.
I'm Peter Jordan. I work at the Faculty of Humanities and Theology, and I'm Professor of Archaeology. I think what's really special here is that there's lots of collaboration and contact between the staff and also the students. So I think in many universities you're in your own sort of box and you operate in that box. I think one thing that helps is the building, or the two buildings that we're situated in. There's a sort of place to eat, there's many places to mix and grab coffee, so you're meeting colleagues all the time, just in corridors, often unexpectedly. And I think that generates a very sort of open, friendly atmosphere where you know people, you're aware of them, you see them every day. And then from there you can start talking about joint research or teaching or just get to know them as people. So I think that's really special and distinctive about the atmosphere here in this particular faculty, and also broader across the university. Lots of contact and very low barriers to collaboration. That's been a surprise.
My name is Young-eun Koo. I'm a historian of modern Korea, and I work for the Joint Faculties of Humanities and Theology. One thing I really like about working at Lund is the support that is available for research grants. So at the Swedish national and EU levels, there are so many funding opportunities, and as a newcomer, it can be quite overwhelming. But the Lund University has a dedicated research service and development offices that is there to support you to identify not only a cause that suits your research, but also to develop strong applications and also manage your relationship with private funders.
One thing that really strikes me is that most of the teaching staff and the students here really do believe in the humanities and that they have a good place and that they should have high visibility. So that's something I really appreciate, that it's not something we should take for granted, but that we should, celebrate the humanities and make them as kind of central as possible.
We have, collaborations within this faculty, between faculties, between Swedish universities, and also across into Denmark, and of course beyond. Lots of collaborations with, for example, East Asia, with Japan, North America. So it's a very dynamic international research environment.
So Sweden has a very unique semester system that I haven't seen elsewhere. For example, in the spring semester, I teach typically from January to March, but from April, I can go fieldwork and conduct my own research. And that's very different from other universities where researchers are kind of pushed to squeeze their research into the short spring break that they have.
The boundaries between teaching and research are quite fluid, I think. Certainly at master's level and PhD level, it's a very inclusive research environment, which of course is also a teaching and mentoring environment at all levels. I think that's something very distinctive here. And I think across the university is that many of the buildings are really new, they're modern, you have really good facilities, good working facilities, but I think balanced alongside that, you also have very deep historical traditions here. So you can walk out of our modern faculty building and you're outside the cathedral, the King's House and so on, the main academic building, which has traditions going back hundreds of years. So you're part of this deeper sort of historical academic tradition, but also taking it into the future with research and teaching. And that's inspiring, I think, being part of this deeper history that's here.